Today, we're going to be talking about the seller cycle. So as I am digging into what's happening currently in everything that's swirling around the ideas of COVID and what going back to work means, I think it's really important to see what the future of real estate is going to look like here in just the near future, right? So what's in the next 90 days going to look like? It's a little bit of a difficult predictor just because there's so much of government involvement in what's happening right now. I think that's a much different approach to what's happening right now in the real estate market and talking about shift. Before, when we talk about shift, it's almost always inevitable, some sort of financial shift that happens to the market in general. And then we're affected of it by having clients that their income is adjusted or maintained in a different aspect of their life. They've been blindsided a little bit. So it's not even necessarily so much of that economic challenge as it is the government intervention in what we can and cannot do, which I don't think there's anything right or wrong kind of argument that we can make in that space. And yet that's why the predictable factor to real estate right now is a little bit more difficult. However, if we can look at the next 90 days and we take into consideration what's happening right now, we can put together a couple of pieces of what I think it's going to look like. So buyers, there's going to be, I think, an influx of buyers because of interest rates, because of the way that they are priming new buyers, and especially those who are frontliners. I'm watching a lot of incentives for anybody who's on the front line of the process through COVID. So your first responders, your doctors, and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of incentive for them to purchase homes. Well, the reality is that we're looking at it from an economic standpoint and a job loss market. Well, real estate is pumping money, or real estate lenders are pumping money into those sectors. Well, those sectors have stayed in work, which means those sectors are still safe in their economic side of things. And so those sectors are still going to be willing, ready, and able to purchase real estate. And then you look at people who are outside of the markets that have been hurt the worst, like oil and gas. That's starting to have a little bit of an after effect. But in the immediate 90 days, it's not going to be so strong in that area. So if we look at the next near future, there's still some incentives for people to purchase. And then you've watched, our expectation is that there's going to be a huge drop in the market, and it just hasn't happened. Not yet. I think in the next 90 days, it's going to look a little bit different, right? So I'm talking this little bitty short-term space. And so when I think about it, there's a buyer influx that I think is going to happen in the next 90 days. The other thing is going to be just a pretty obvious. There is going to be a seller shortage. It's going to be low inventory. There was already low inventory. We were already in a seller's market. Now, anybody who did pump their brakes to put their house on the market, that has slowed. They're going to be a little bit more hesitant still. And so there's going to be an influx of buyers and low inventory. Well, that's a different market that we've got to be able to talk about. And so when I look at it from a seller's perspective, I think now is the most important time that we look at just a quick chart. This is not my chart. This is from a training with Keller Williams. There's a Win with Sellers course that I would encourage you to take the full entire thing. And yet there is a really interesting graph in there that I want to poke through that graph and make sure, if we're really looking at a low inventory space with sellers, how do we anticipate and change that market for myself? How do I gain market share from that space? And so really the very first space is to understand the seller's service cycle, is what they call it in Win with Sellers. And so that's what I'm going to walk through and just give some quick tidbits in each of those spaces that we should be looking at or considering a little bit differently right now, according to today's market. Okay. So good 10-minute preface there, but hopefully that helps you to really reframe your thought process and what you can get out of today in our conversation. So if you look through the 7, it's going to be lead conversion, pre-listing, listing consultation, service and marketing, offering negotiations, contract to close, and then post-close systems. So the very first in the seller service cycle is going to be lead conversion. Obviously, when we look at lead generation, I have been challenging everybody who's in our leadership world to begin to bring analogies and metaphors into the lead generation process. And the reason why I say that, and the reason why that's so important, is that for us who have been in the real estate business, we tend to tell the same stories, we tend to feel the same things, and we tend to regurgitate what has been brought to us. And so if I'm looking at lead generation and I went and I said, you know what, guys, lead generation is the most important thing, nobody would argue with me. And yet only about 20% of the people are doing it. If I were to go to you say, hey guys, here's the deal. Lead generation, you've got to be able to, like, every single day, eat your frog. You've got to do your 20 calls every single day first. Nobody would disagree with me. And only 20% of the people would do it. And we go, hey guys, lead generation, you have to feed your database every single day. And you've got to get in there. Your future business, your pipeline is all built out of your lead generation. Everybody would agree with me. And yet only 20% of the people would do it. And so when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change, right? If I am looking at lead generation and I begin to think about it in different analogies or different metaphors, I approach it differently. And here's one of the ones that I want to hit you between the eyes with that I was talking about yesterday with our leadership. If you personified your lead generation, right? So I took who I was as a lead generator, and it was a person sitting in front of me. And this person said, hey, man, I want to be hired into your business. I love your mission, vision, values. I love your culture. I love who you're about. I love everything about you, man. You are 100% who I want to be when I grow up. Will you hire me? And then you start going through the interview process for your lead generation. You just personified your lead generation. Would you hire your lead generator into your business? Would you hire yourself essentially to do lead generation for your business? My guess is it's a really tough question to answer, because the answer more than likely for a majority of us is no, because we understand the effort that we put into lead generation and it's not there. A lot of times we are struggling in that space. And I think if we change the way we look at things and we begin to look at it as that metaphorical side of things, as that analogy side of things, our stories start to change a little bit in our brains. I know it's important, but there's a lot of things that are important that I skip over in my day all day long, every single day, even hygienically, even health-wise. There's a lot of things that we will skip over based off of the importance scale. So importance isn't necessarily, I think, a story that helps us move forward. It could be wildly important, and yet so many of us choose to do things that are not important all day long. And so when we're thinking about lead and lead generation, I want you to think about it in that scope. And so that second little caveat to this little piece to the lead generation is that the lead conversion, the lead generation has to happen. That's the 0.5. If there was another little pie piece in this, the little 0.5 would be a sliver that says lead generation. And so here's the deal. When we look at lead conversion, for everybody who's listening to this call or listening to this video, anybody who's in earshot of me, I will tell you that lead conversion happens when we track and we master tracking, right? We have to master tracking. How many calls did it take to get to an appointment? Write that down. How many appointments did it take to get to an agreement? Write that down. How many agreements did it take to get to a contract? Write that down. How many contracts did it take to get to a close? The mastering of the seller service cycle starts with this lead conversion. I think it's brilliant that it does. Obviously, that is the first space just in the timeline, and yet it's the most important piece, because we have to have conversion ratios to understand what we do to manipulate our business to move in the direction of our goals always. And if I understand where a seller is at any given aspect, my ability to convert them goes up, because in the middle of there, it's how I interact with them. It's my conversion ratios. And when I tweak those conversion ratios, I make the adjustments necessary to have the right conversations, to be the fiduciary, to be the advocate. I understand what sales looks like. I understand how to move people forward in the process. I understand how to have great conversations. There's a lot of elements that's in that gap right there between lead generation and lead conversion. Those are skill sets that we can't bypass, and yet we can't get to those skill sets until we lead generate, and we don't know how to affect those skill sets until we do lead conversion, right? Until we actually know our conversion ratios. So there's a big chunk of skills in that space that we would just be guessing at what we have to fix until we get deep into our business and master our relationship with lead generation and understanding our conversion ratio, so that we can take that big chunk, that meaty chunk inside of there, and dig into the skill sets. And I'll tell you, the skill sets that are in there, they're going to be like, where are your lead sources? How are you marketing? What are you doing to prospect? What are you doing to lead generate? Where are the leads coming from? Where are your scripts? Are you doing script practice and role play? How is your conversations? Right? That's one. Probably need to fix that. How are your conversations? Is there a class you need to take? Is there a hiring that you need to do? Is there leverage that you need in your life? It's a big, pretty meaty chunk. I do a lot of consultation around that one moment. And the easiest space to dig into it and hit a bullseye is to know, where are my conversion ratios? Call to appointment, appointment to agreement, agreement to contract, and contract to close. If you track just those 4 things, you will find the gaps in your business that have opportunity for growth. Okay. Second thing in the seller service cycle, you move into the pre-listing. And I actually highlighted this one. Number 2, I highlighted it because very few people in real estate, as I'm watching, very few real estate professionals really do a lot on the pre-listing side of things. And pre-listing side of things, if I were to tell you to do one thing, get into the habit of a pre-listing packet. I know for a fact, because I teach these sorts of things all the time, that very few people will do a pre-listing packet. And a pre-listing packet is an introduction as to me, what's happening, what's going on, the market. It gives the clients insight. And the reason why I believe it is so important is if I'm going to look at hiring a fiduciary professional, there's a way a fiduciary professional looks, and I give you that glimpse into my life by giving you that pre-listing packet. And there's a lot of elements that can go into that. It would probably need to be another class, and you're welcome to message me. I could go through and walk through any of this with you if you want to be able to look at and evaluate what your pre-listing packet looks like. And yet I'm just going to say, get into the habit of a pre-listing packet that goes out with every single appointment that you're going to be setting. Now, there are people who would argue with me, and there's contradictory terms all over the place. And yet, if you did no pre-listing packet, the caveat to the pre-listing packet is homework. We are doing very little homework going into and I hope it's okay. I'm talking at 11 here. I'm hitting everybody between the eyes, I think. But we do very little homework when we go into it because we're resting on our skills and our knowledge to be able to carry us forward. And I was listening to a master class the other day, and there's this presidential historian, and she was talking about leadership, right? And she started talking about leadership, and she said, what's really interesting is that as I began to watch leaders and what they were doing, I began to watch some of this natural brilliance kind of elevate. She was watching these people who are just naturally talented, very beautifully, naturally talented. And because she was around presidents a lot, she was watching their cabinet, and she goes, there's some of these people that just automatically just rose to the top because of their natural skills. And she said, but what I found is that so many of those people began to wing it, and they rested on their skills. And as they were going into the winging it process, almost every president that she watched would choose somebody that was on the other side of it, maybe not naturally brilliant, but that always did their work and their homework and were always prepared to bring like the actual content to the space versus their natural talent to the space. And I think that's really important. I think that's a really clear line to draw in our world. Most of us are incredibly talented at what we do, and especially with sellers. And so hear me say that, and I want to give you the kudos for being naturally talented. And yet the person who more than likely has the longevity and the win, and especially in this coming up climate, is a person who does their homework to such a degree that they could anticipate any conversation that's going to start. And I think about one of the stories that I have in this. When I was a young buyer's agent, I was helping a gentleman purchase a property, and he was going to be purchasing it in Waller, Texas. Well, there's a high-speed light rail that was going through Houston to Dallas. Well, if you looked at a map and you weren't really thinking very much, you would think the best direct route from Houston to Dallas is up 45. That's where everybody would go. They would take 45. Well, what's really interesting about the way that they were developing the light rail is they were going to go up a different highway, and then they were going to get into Waller and then cut over and then go up to Dallas. That was the process for the, well, I knew everything about what this guy was going to do. I knew his business. I knew everything that was happening. I didn't do a ton of research on the land side of things because in my head, land was so different. We're going to get there. We're going to get in the process, and we'll do the homework then. We looked at a particular property and we got really excited about it. He made a call to the county engineer office, and they were like, yeah, and I need to send you the map because the high speed light rail is actually going to go through the front end of that property. And so eventually there's a good chance it's going to be annexed. Well, he come back to me and he's like, hey, so talk to me about this. And I like caught with my pants down. I didn't know what to do, right? There was a moment of just pure vulnerability, lack of doing homework. I did not look like a professional in that space. In the same sense, if we're going to look at this listing cycle, what would it look like when we go into our presentations fully prepared for every single question, and that when they arise, we can speak to it confidently? It's about doing the homework. And there's a few elements that are just absolutely necessary. You want to know neighborhoods when you walk in. You need to know neighboring neighborhoods, right? You need to be able to have that conversation. You need to understand what's happening. They're more than likely going to ask you questions about home values, about average price points, about all that stuff. We usually will do this present with them, and that's fine, but you need to do some of your homework beforehand. And then what's the next layer of it? One of the things that Houston, Texas does that I would highly encourage every single one of you to have a footing in is to understand what's happening around you commercially, right? What's happening around me in future development. Community Impact Magazine is something that is it's a publication that goes out. I get a Community Impact Magazine all the time. I would highly encourage you to understand what development is happening around where the seller is selling. It's going to be an important piece to the puzzle, because for them, it shows that you understand more about what's happening, and that you'll take that same care for them in the buying process, and you'll get both sides of the transaction. So just a little bit of a forethought, but the biggest thing on the pre-listing side of things, guys, get into a habit of a pre-listing packet so they have an awareness of who you are and what you do. Okay. Number 3, the listing consultation. This is an easy thing. We'll bypass this pretty quickly. You need to perfect the presentation. You need to perfect the presentation, right? And we all know this, and yet we still have a little moment of resting on, we've done it 20 times. We know that we can walk into it and do it. 2 things in this space, why you need to know it forwards and backwards. One is that data makes them think, emotions make them act. Data makes me think, emotions make me act. Most of our presentations are data. We need to understand how to have the data conversations through questions, so that then we can start digging out the emotions. Have the data conversations through questions. And that's a really simple of reframing of, did you understand that? Blah, 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 blah. No, I didn't know. Awesome. Well, can I talk about that for a second? Yes. And once you get into that space and you say, what kind of impact would that have on you guys if fill in the blank? When you start asking data questions through you start having the data conversation through questions, it changes up the way things are happening, so that you can start digging into the emotions and helping them move through the process and acting. So when you look at the sellers, it really is important to when you go into your presentation, to ask questions. And the reason why is that what you're really doing there is you're creating story. And there's a lot of activity that has to happen in story when we're face to face with people. And the reason is story helps us dig through and assimilate information the fastest. Like, think about all the things that you've learned, like, the most in your life, or learned the quickest, or have been the best expert. More than likely, it started in a story aspect. You have to bring story into your equation if you're going to have great relationships with sellers that turn into forever clients. Okay. So listing consultation, perfect it so that then you know how to ask the data you need to deliver in questions. I know that sounds crazy, and yet it's absolutely vital. Find out how you can ask the data that you need to deliver in questions. And don't just say, like, hey, do you know what I mean? That makes them feel like they're an idiot. You've got to be able to ask, are you aware of how blah, 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 blah? No, awesome. Do you mind if I shed some light on that? Yes, sweet. So what would you do if X, Y, and Z? Well, I don't know. I would do this, that, and the other. Well, right. So you keep having this back and forth opportunity for them to hear the information, but also feel like they're still somewhat in control, so that then they feel comfortable and confident that they can move forward with you. Okay. Number 4 in this wheel, service and marketing. So in the seller cycle, the idea behind service and cycling, guys, everything in servicing and marketing, it's about a system of excellence. And I want you to think about that, a system of excellence. If you were to write down your service, like write down how you bring service, if you wrote those things down and you read that back, would it be something that you would want to experience yourself? So that's first level of, like, would my service be worthy of myself? Would I walk into a hotel that I'm paying a lot of money for and be okay with it? Okay. And I really want you to think about that, because when you take that into consideration, most of what they're getting in a fiduciary responsibility is obviously knowledge and an advocate and that consultation, but they're also getting service. They're also paying a lot of money for a very high-end service. That doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to pull out white gloves every single time, But what it does mean is that we have to evaluate the ways in which we service people and live in that golden rule space. The very first thing is do unto others as you would want done unto you. Am I treating in a service space the way that I would expect to be treated in a service space? So that's great because that helps to go through your filters and it gives you a great glimpse into the very first space that you really need to have that conversation. Do unto others as you would have done to you. There's a second layer, though, that's in there that how do you treat people the way that they want to be treated? That's the platinum rule, right? Treat others the way they wanted to be treated. And so if you're looking at your service sector and you do A, B, and C because that's what makes you happy, but as you find the process going and as you're evaluating your process for servicing, is that something that is just only very specific to you and that the majority of the people would find themselves like out of sorts with that? A great way to measure this one piece, guys, is to really think about if you've ever done any DISC personality tests or DISC behavioral tests. I would encourage you to go do some Googling and find the DISC personalities, do some research and read it, because you'll find most people are an S personality style. And yet most salespeople are I's. Well, I's and S's clash. And without going into too much detail, and again, I would encourage you, I'll make a link here. I would encourage you to read those because if I'm looking at my servicing structure, I more than likely have built it around my filters of an I or a D. Some of you are D's, ID. Well, the S, their big conversation an S is really looking for is trust. An I is looking for the camaraderie. A D is looking for like just, can I do this fast? Their biggest fear is they don't want to be taken advantage of. If I do my service based off of those things, and yet what the S really wanted the whole time was trust, am I building a service based off of what I want versus what they want? It's just an evaluation process. And I would encourage you to do that, right? I'm thinking about these things on a higher level. My expectation is that you have a servicing and marketing plan, evaluate it in a way that takes you into a chess master position versus a pawn. We exercise our business so often like a pawn versus looking at ourselves like a chess master. The other thing on that is that at the end of the day, everything we do on the listing side of things, it's all marketing. Okay. Listing is marketing. There's no other way around it. When I put a sign in the yard, I need to make sure the exposure of my client is at the highest level. And so when you're looking at that from a marketing standpoint, how many of us are believing that there's still this moment of if we build it, they will come, right? We'd like to say no, and yet there is a little bit of that. We allow the market to sell the homes, right? And so we allow the conditions of the market. Are there buyers out there? Yes. Well, we put a sign in the yard and they'll buy. The average days on market is 60 days. We wait 60 days and it happens. And yet there's a huge difference in what we can do as an excellent listing agent by effectively changing the way we market homes based off of that home's characteristic. And I really want you to think about this. If I walked into a grocery store and I began to look at all the marketing that was happening around me, right? Package design, branding, mission, vision, values, cost, all of those little elements that are coming into the marketing aspect. I bet there's a different way in which I would look at purchasing bubble gum and the way it was marketed to me. Is it flashy? It's a real, the risk of it's very low. Is it tasty? Does it sound tasty? It's super easy. Like if I got Rudy Tooty or if I got Fruit Punch, man, whichever one is just going to satisfy me, right? That's an easy. If I go in and I'm looking at the oils section, right? I'm going to use a weird grocery store analogy. And I'm looking at the oils section. And I think I just got to deep fry chicken wings. I'm just deep frying chicken wings. It doesn't matter how you market to me. I'm looking at a price section. I'm going to get the biggest, fattest vat of cheap grease to make sure that I can deep fry my chicken wings. So the marketing of that is going to look different than the way I might look at if I were creating or making this super cool dish. Maybe I'm making a really exotic Chinese food dish and I need a toasted sesame seed oil. And I look at all of them. The way that those oils are marketed is going to make a difference in the way that I purchase the oil because they're all going to be in that $10 to $15 range for a little tiny bottle of oil. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to, well, how did they really want to catch my eye? Did they catch my eye? Does the price actually look like it blends to it? Are they look super simple? Does it look overly complicated? Do they make me feel invited to it? Is it easy to read? Is it easy to understand? Right. So there's a lot of these aspects that I don't know that we think about this. The way we write copy is really important. The way we write copy for our listings is really important. I don't know that we're evaluating that all the time. I see so many errors just in grammar, in remarks on listings. It's a really important piece to the puzzle. I know it doesn't feel that way. And yet, if we're talking about the seller cycle, the reason why I'm using it in this aspect, the reason why I chose to borrow this graph to talk about sellers and the processes that are happening is that we desire for it to be a cycle. We want the person that we did lead conversion to go through this cycle and to start over again and purchase with me. The way they do that, the way that I ensure that is to make sure there's a system in each of these spaces that ensures that I'm the story they want to tell. And if I'm doing listing and I'm marketing a home, everything matters. The way I say it, the way it's branded, the way the pictures look, the way the copy's written, the accessibility. Can people get to it in 2 clicks? Do they have to go register for a site? Do they have, like, how many things does a consumer have to do to experience my home? And did I remove as many barriers as I can through marketing to make sure that I am not just selling a commodity, but I'm selling me, my mission, vision, value, my branding, my values. Those are the things that are coming to the table. So I know it's not rocket science, and I know that I necessarily give you any how-tos on this section. I think this is an evaluative process that then you go back to the leadership that you're underneath. You go back to your coaching. You go back to your team leaders. You go back to your brokers, and you have the conversation of, I'm lacking in the marketing section. What can you do to help me? Any of you guys out there, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't want to step on any toes, but I love this stuff. I love this stuff. You can message me anytime. randyolive@kw.com. I don't care what brand you're with. If you want to have this conversation, I'm going to open up the door and we're going to have the conversation. This is the fun space. And if you look at it, listing is only marketing first. It's only marketing first. Once you have the listing in hand, it is only marketing first. Okay. Offers and negotiations. So one of the things that I like to look at when I think about offers and negotiations, you need to make everything easy. Offers and negotiations are really difficult. We overcomplicate everything that we do in the offers and negotiating side of things. And here's what I mean. When I send an offer, I almost always make a buyer's agent go through and dig all the information out and send it to me, because there's some sort of reason why I think that I shouldn't put together this is how I want an offer received, so that every offer comes in and it looks the same, so that when I present it to my clients, they feel ease in it. I don't have to overly explain anything that comes in. There's no challenges. I am in control of making sure the process is coming in very simply and easily into the space. I can bring all that information, bring an advocate and a fiduciary. I can be a consultant to my client. Make the contract process easy. Receiving a contract and giving that information to my client, make it easy. Here's what I watch most agents do. And I'm telling you, I'm giving you a pathway to excellence that is going to make a huge difference and create you to be the 20% that's gaining market share. Most agents will take the offers, put it together in a PDF stack, ship it to their client, say, read over these and we'll have a conversation about it later. That is a weak, very sloppy path of it just is. And again, we're going to have this conversation. It's sloppy. It should be packaged, put together with ease so that they understand everything and they can make the best decision for them and their family. You get to step out of the process, remove you from the space, and you truly get to be a consultant. What would happen if you shipped off a PDF, you have a bad day, you come to the conversation, and you're very short, it's emotional, it's weird because you weren't prepared. They start asking questions, you get defensive, and then all of a sudden, you're fighting your client about having enough information about making a decision for them in a really big process. Make it easy, and you need to make it easy on yourself to be able to do that. Leverage a lot of that. I know that we have a lot of systems built through technology, and I say we, Keller Williams, that's my brand. Again, your brand probably has something. Utilize the leverage that you have to make sure these processes are easy. What can you do to quickly get the information, sift it through a process, and ship it out? This is also a leveraging process through an assistant. If you want to talk about hiring, we can have that conversation later. But there should be always the contract sorry, the offers and negotiation process should be super easy, and everybody should always be able to dig into that really quickly and get the information that they need to make the decisions. On negotiation side of it, I want you to think about this. On negotiation side, your advocate for you in your negotiations is the agent on the other side of the transaction. How are you treating the agent on the other side of the transaction? Do they feel valued? Do they feel respected? Do they feel like they have rapport with you? Because I want you to think, if I send out this offer and I've got to be able to trust that that agent is going to deliver the information properly, then I need to make sure the information is delivered properly. And the way that they receive it is done in a proper manner. My relationship matters. The way they receive the information matters, right? So did I line it up? Is it laid out perfectly? Did I do it the way it was necessary? There's a lot of elements that go into that. And so when you look at negotiations, the back and forth of negotiations is really, I won't give up on this if you won't give up on this. And let's always continue to move towards that ground that we can move we can move everything forward. Now, if you want to have more power in negotiations, learn the power of questions. You got to learn the power of questions. Again, I've done classes on this, and that's a class for another day. And I'm welcome to even have this. I will have as many private conversations as necessary. I truly want to see the rising tide, right? A rising tide raises all ships. I want to see the level of agents grow to be an excellent condition. Okay. But I will tell you this, if you want to learn the power of negotiation, understand questions and rapport. If you understand questions and rapport, you will have the upper hand in negotiations always. And the beautiful thing about the upper hand in negotiations, it's not a manipulative thing. It's just the ability to move everything in the journey faster forward. Okay. You remove all the roadblocks and you can move everything in faster and forward. Okay. All right. So that's their little negotiations and offers. Contract to close. This needs to just be a system. It needs to live in technology. Okay. I'm just going to tell you, contract to close. I get a contract. Every single date that's on that contract goes into my calendar. It's out of my brain. Every single element that's going into the closing side, I've already drafted up emails that ship out to my clients so they understand what to do next. I want you to think about this. In the contract to close process, your client should never have to ask you a question in the whole process. What would you do and what system would you set up that in the contract to close process, your client would never have to ask you a question because you've anticipated all of it and you've answered them in real time as the journey is moving? We have a plague in our world and it's called busy, and we get into this busy cycle. And the busy cycle says, we're in contract to close. That's fine. We don't have inspections until Monday. I'm not going to call you until Monday. Well, the reality is that you should be touching your client every single day in the process. If I want to have a true valuable contract to close, I should anticipate everything. And my client should never have to ask me a question because I am already asking them the questions. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, here's what's happening. Or sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Here's what's happening today. Here's what's happening tomorrow. And here are the things that we need to do. Do you have any questions about that? You do or you don't. The beautiful thing that I found about leadership is that once we get into the space of doing our true outbound, when we do our outbound, and that's not just lead generation, our outbound has to do conversation with those who are in our protection, right? Those who we are leading. If we do outbound to find out how they are, what they're doing, they're much more satisfied in the whole process just from a conversation that was like 0 words exchanged. Hey man, it's Randy. What's going on? Oh, not a whole lot. Okay. Hey man, I just want to call and see how you're doing. Is everything moving forward? Are you guys good? Yeah, we're good. Man, is there anything that I need? No, I'm literally just calling you today to check in, make sure there's nothing going on. Sweet, man. No, we're good. I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye. See, the reason why we don't do those calls every single day is that we're expecting that, and especially our worst buyers or worst sellers, we're expecting, hey, this is great. I just want to call, see how everything's going. Oh my gosh, the world is falling apart. Did you know that the world is falling apart? Because I want to tell you about how the world is falling apart. Oh my gosh, I'm going to say something terribly wrong, and you're going to bomb this contract. Yeah, you're right. I am. And that's what we think is going to happen. And the reality is that that's very rare. It does happen. And the reality is it was going to happen anyways because of that personality if you didn't have a great buyer consultation. We've got to get out of the fear of having conversations every single day to spot check what's happening. The evaluative process of our systems is key. Okay? I hope this makes sense, guys. And this is not rocket science. And yet I'm hoping to change the way you think about things so that the things that you actually do are changing and moving forward in the process. What happens when you are running a system like this in a seller's market with low inventory? Now your farming just increased your market share because you knew how to have a lead conversation, lead generating, lead conversation questions and answers. You knew how to adjust to the shifting market. You knew how to pivot, which is a very buzzworthy word right now. You knew how to pivot, not because everybody else was telling you how to pivot, but because you knew exactly where your numbers were, where the market was doing, and how to move the market forward. When we really want to be excellent and we want to be masters in our world, we'll give up our own thought processes and move into the ideas and the ideals of systems. And we will evaluate those things all the time to make sure it's moving in the direction of our goals. Okay. Last thing I'm going to look at is a post-close system. There's a lot of things that can happen here. Do I give a gift? Do I not give a gift? How do I give keys? How do I exchange? I don't want to talk about that. Just write those things down and do it. Like, it's not rocket science. I'm not being rude. It's just not rocket science. Write it down and do it. What is rocket science, apparently, is the referral process. If we really want to build a big, strong business, we want to have our business eventually be a referral business. We want to have a 90% referral rate in our business. That would be brilliant. It'd be beautiful. I actually have a little smart ass answer to everybody who says they want to double their business. I always go, cool. How many referrals did you get this year? And they're like, usually like 3 or 4. I'm like, awesome. Get 100% referrals and you doubled your business. And like, oh, but then it's like, sweet. Well, here's the challenge. When we look at the referral business, how many times does it take to close anybody on anything? If you look at enough industry data, you'll see that it's about 5 to 12 times that it's going to take me closing you to actually close you or move you into the process of the transaction. Okay. So if that is true, I take a seller through, I'm going to meet with you till I'm going to close you. And I ask you one time, hey, do you know anybody's looking to buy or sell real estate? That's 1 out of 5/12. So you need to ask another 11 times. And yet what we do is we go, do you know anybody buy or sell real estate? Nope. Sweet. I'll call you every quarter to see if you know anybody. It's a failed process. It's a failed system. I'm going to think about you once every quarter, give you a call, see if you like me still, and ask you for a referral. You can argue with me, and I'm happy to argue. That is a failed system. The day I meet you, I should be prepping for a referral. The day we sign an agreement, I should be prepping for a referral. The day we go into contract, I'm prepping for a referral. The day I send you the appraisal, we're prepping for a referral. The day that you are connected to a closing date, you're connected to a referral. The day we do inspection, you're connected to a referral. The day that we exchange keys, you're connected to a referral. The day there's a final walkthrough, you're connected to a referral. I am closing you through the process, and I have a system in place for that. You see, we have a challenge with math, I think. Let me just be honest with you. We have a challenge with math. We look at numbers and we go, let's just get a scratch off. Scratch offs are easier. And we play the luck game. Well, the luck is, yeah, you might get a referral every once in a while. The purposeful game is I'm going to have a system to make sure through the process I'm getting a referral every single time. The way that happens is that I have a closing process that starts at day one. They make sure that people are prepped for a referral. The second thing in this is that my campaigns that I do, my weak sauce campaigns that I'm doing, the hey, here's my newsletter once a month. Hey, here's my phone call once a quarter. It's not good enough. How can you make sure you're targeting your database based off of their needs? If I just spent 45 days with you, my client, through this whole process, man, I should know so much about who you are, and I should tag the mess out of you in my database to understand, gosh, what are your kids into? What are you into? What is your family into? Where do you go all the time on vacation? When's your next event? How is this going? What's happening on Facebook? What I should know, I should have such a defined profile about who you are that you never get a generic piece of information from me ever again. I should know so much about you that you never get a generic piece of information from me ever again, that I'm always and forever going to target you based off of what I know you are, who you are, and what I know you like. Now, I can still send you my newsletter. It's fine. I can still call you once a quarter. That's fine. But all the in between spaces is not, hey, this is Randy. Just want to see how you're doing. Okay. Oh, hey. Those aren't things. We've got to be able to look at everything that we're doing. If I am looking at the next 90 days and I just evaluated my business by this, I have the ability to gain market share over every single other agent because I'm a true professional and I can easily go through the objection handling with anybody who's walking into a listing presentation before or after me because it won't matter. I will walk out with keys. I will slap a sign in the yard and I'm ready to go. I would tell you, do this and have the audacity to start bringing your for sale sign with you. Walk into the front door with your sign and say, "Hey, is it okay if I just let this out right here?" What is that? Oh, it's my sign because after we have a conversation, I just wanted to bring it with me to stick it in the yard. Have the tenacity to be better. Have the tenacity to grow. Have the tenacity to look at this. This is a true seller cycle. I didn't want to recreate anything or have a different wheel because what Keller Williams put together with the Win with Sellers content, this is a true seller cycle. This is not rocket science. And yet everything is happening in those in between stages. There should be an evaluation process of excellence that makes me elevate and takes me to market share in the life that I really want by design. It gives me meaning in life. Okay. That's what I would encourage every single one of you to do in the next 2 to 3 days. It's a lot to dig into each one of those spaces that we talked about in each seven. And yet, if you're going to start with one thing and you're only going to do one thing, it is the post close system. If you're going to do two things, it's a post close system and it's a pre listing. And if you're going to do three things, just do them in order. You're right. But if you're only going to grab a couple of things to apply to your life, do the post close system and do the pre listing packet. Look at what those two things look like for you, because I think those will have the most impact in what you can do in your business right now and what it will mean for your future business. Those are future business conversations so that your what's happening today is actually breeding what's happening in the future. So, all right, guys, I hope this makes sense. I hope I wasn't too harsh. I know that I can speak a little bit like between the eyes. I think you can take it. I feel like you can take it. And especially those who will listen and apply what's happening right now into their businesses, it'll change everything. I appreciate you every time. You don't have to sit in here and listen to me. I appreciate it. I really do. This is what I love to do. I am filled by giving you this space. And I hope that you would comment, email me, ask me for help. I'm here for anybody and everybody. I really believe that we have been given such great opportunities in this world, and we've got to give back from those opportunities we've been given. Let's stand on the shoulders of giants. Let's be excellent. Let's be fiduciaries. Let's go in and let's grow this business to where we know it really can be. Okay. Y'all are awesome. Y'all are amazing. Go have a beautiful day. Peace out.